Hello, I'm Charles Kovess, Australasia's passion provocateur. Welcome to this week's episode of the Charles Kovess Show. In this week's episode, I'm going to share with you why I love the law and why it matters that you do so too. I explore what happens if we lose respect for the law, and how our politicians these days all around the world are causing us to lose that respect. Law is such a crucial foundation for the way you and I are able to lead our lives. Imagine living life before the Magna Carta was passed in the 14th century or 13th century, being at the whim of kings, being at the whim of nobles, where there was no protection from the law, where there actually was no adequate law. That's what North Korea is like today. Stick around and see why your role in loving the law will help to preserve the life that you want to live and to help design a better life into the future. This weekly show is founded on the formula SA plus P equals S, self-awareness plus passion equals success, since 1993, when I left my successful legal career. To become Australasia's passion provocateur, I have inspired, educated and provoked audiences to discover their passion to live life with passion. It is a great way to live life. I'm a professional speaker. I've run conferences, I've delivered speeches, I've run workshops, I've coached teams over extended periods of time, and I have been an executive coach and continue to be an executive coach for many successful people whose lives have been changed because of insights relating to passion, leadership, strategy. This show is designed to make life better for you. Thank you for being here. I've also helped people with my books, Passionate People Produce and Passionate Performance. This show is also guided by Socrates' famous quote, "The unexamined life is not worth living." So I hope I provoke you to examine your life to increase your self-awareness. You can see I'm wearing my red jacket, red, the color of passion, so that when you see something red, you say to yourself, gosh, I wonder, am I pursuing my passion? Or if I don't know what my passion is, am I seeking my passion? Or thirdly, the red reminds you that even though you might not be passionate about your work is enabling you to earn money, to survive, to live, so that you can pursue your passion, which might not be a money-making enterprise. Each week I explore just one big idea that can change your life, because too many ideas confuse us. One big idea, 52 ideas a week. Wow. This is episode 77, so I've shared 77 big ideas so far. Each week, with that one idea, I share 6 resources that I have found useful in implementing the ideas, both for me and for my coaching clients. The lyrics of a song, a book, a spiritual tip, a health tip, a quote, and some humor. After all, life was not meant to be taken too seriously. For all of us, the only way life is going to end is with death. So we're all going to end up in the same place, aren't we? Of course, there might be reincarnation. Get ready for that. This show is not politically correct, but I promote useful addictions, including my addiction for this wonderful stuff called coffee. I love it. I love it. Coffee is the fuel. But I don't overindulge my addictions. I would have, I reckon, no more than 6 cups a day. I don't think Very rare that I would go over 6, many times less than 6. But I love the stuff. Addictions in moderation are good for you. As John Tickell famously said, everything in moderation except 4 things: sex, laughter, fish, and vegetables. This show definitely subscribes to the view that we have a spiritual life. The human spirit is such an amazing resource. So all of you who are scared of anything to do with spirituality, this is not the place to be. So for episode 77, what's happened over the course of the past week? Well, I have been quite busy with the activities of the World Council for Health, a newly established global organisation representing over 30 medical organisations, all of them opposed to what governments around the world are doing in relation to medical matters that, you know what, I won't mention that C word because YouTube does its best to avoid people talking about the C word. Interesting, isn't it, the censorship that is going on, the outrageous censorship. This participation in the World Council for Health also has me on 2 legal committees. And so it means on Tuesday mornings I have a meeting at 5 a.m, on Friday morning at 4 a.m, and this morning at 4 a.m. But the matters that I'm dealing with on that I consider to be relevant to the future of humanity. This week, the mandatory vaccination orders are coming thick and fast from companies. I urge you, if you do not want to be stabbed with poisons, with gene-altering substances that you don't even know what actually is being injected, you don't have to. And if you succumb because you can't afford to lose your job, that is a horrible price to pay. There will be increasing pushback, just as there was yesterday in Melbourne and other places around the world of protests. And the live footage that I have seen that was scandalously misreported by the mainstream media is available, and you should be aware that the behaviour of police in Melbourne was disgraceful. I call it out. And for mainstream media to say that protesters are going nuts is a lie. Trust me, it's a lie. There are old, middle-aged to elderly women being pepper sprayed by police who are acting not like police but as paramilitary units funded by government, Victorian government, led by a corrupt, evil Premier Daniel Andrews. And you observe what these police are doing. It is paramilitary. They rock up in black buses. Black buses. No Victoria Police. There's a big shift going on, everybody. The stabs that are that are aimed to be put into vast numbers of Australians and people all around the world, saying that you'll be free when enough people are stabbed. That is unlawful, unconstitutional, and that's why I'm talking about this topic this week. You are free to be stabbed, to have an injection of gene-altering materials, gene-manipulating materials. If you want, you go for it. I have zero fear about a virus. Zero. Do you understand that? And that's one of the reasons why I remind you each week about the importance of your health. Take care of your health. I call it medical apartheid, what is happening now, because politicians who I consider to be broadly corrupted by what's going on are now purporting to split our society into the jabbed and the unjabbed. That is apartheid. I consider it to be medical rape, and I say that advisedly from the work that I'm doing on the World Council for Health. And you can look it up at the worldcouncilforhealth.org if you want support to push back against this medical rape, against this medical apartheid. And while I'm doing all of this work, trust me, I'm also doing my exercise. I'm looking after my health, riding bikes, riding my bike. I've got two bikes, depending on whether I'm going to go hills or whether I'm going to go flat. Being careful about what I eat, trying to get the appropriate amount of sleep so that this machine keeps functioning well. I urge you to keep your machine functioning well. And if you have exercised your freedom to go and have your jab, you might have to take extra health precautions. And if you are exercising your freedom not to be jabbed, or if you have been jabbed because you don't want to lose your job, there are certain things that you can do. Send me an email to charles@covest.com. I will give you some useful resources. Now, before we get to this week's big idea that is very relevant to what I've been talking about in terms of what's going on our planet, in Australia, in your country as well, is to refer you to our websites, covest.com for corporate programs or public programs, and charlescovest.com for the self-awareness and passion quest. Visit those websites, subscribe to Passion Points to Ponder. You can get a copy of the Self-Awareness and Passion Quest manifesto. And as ever, if you have any suggestions for what you would like me to be talking about, please send an email to charles@covest.com. So, to today's big idea, why I love the law and why it is so important that you do so too. Imagine life without law. Imagine if there was no law, if it was entirely the law of might. Hey, that's a law in itself, isn't it? If there's no man-made law, it was just dependent on strength, bang, people take what they want, do what they want. That is not appealing. And there are two types of law. There's natural law or God's law and man-made law. I learned this distinction very early in my legal career from my wonderful mentor who was a Jesuit priest, Father Zoltan Varga, and Zoltan was my dad's first name, good Hungarian name. Zoltan Karpathy was the famous linguist, the Hungarian famous linguist in My Fair Lady, for those of you who can remember that movie. Father Varga and I had conversations, deep conversations about what natural law was, what God's law was, what man's law was, and can you make law contrary to God's law? Interesting question. Then there is issues around equity law, around maritime law, around admiralty law, around common law. They are all important concepts that protect your right to be free, for you to be a human, to live your life in the way that you want to live your life. This is an important philosophical question. How do you want to live your life, and what are the laws that should apply to it? From an early age, I wanted to be a lawyer because, for whatever reason, I was very committed to helping people be able to be treated fairly, to have justice for what is just, to have justice applied in their lives. If somebody unjustly hurt them or took something away from them, or if government acted inappropriately, I was very keen about fighting for justice, about fighting for fairness. That's why I wanted to be a lawyer. Without law, there is anarchy. Law is the foundation of every society on this wonderful earth that we live in, our spaceship Earth, a little ball whizzing around in this solar system as part of the Milky Way galaxy. And the Milky Way galaxy is one of hundreds of millions of galaxies. We're a tiny little spaceship with 8 billion of us. And if we don't regulate ourselves in some way that works for 8 billion of us, we are wonderfully capable of destroying ourselves. If we act fairly and justly and have a foundation that honours the fact that we're entitled to live life on the way that we want to without harming others, then we can have magnificent lives. And I say to you that life has been improving for people on the planet. Interestingly, in 1900, at the start of the 20th century, there were only 1.9 billion people on the planet. Now there's 8 billion. One of the foundations of this improvement has been the law, because without law, it is very difficult to build wealth, to build an improved way of living life. Where just if there were no law, then people can't protect what they've got, so that the strong get stronger, and then basically, if they attract enough people to them, and I think Afghanistan is an example of that, we would have a series of tribes all warring with each other. So that's how I see the law. That's why I think the law has made life better. However, I consider that the law today is being abused in a wide range of ways. And if something that you loved, or a person that you loved, was being abused, would you stand by and let it being abused? I'm not willing to do that. And that's why I'm pushing back against government overreach. I have all my life, and I'm particularly doing it now with the medical issues that are consuming outrageous decisions by politicians, by corrupt politicians, by politicians who have been corrupted by commercial interests, by improper matters. I'm fighting for the law because I love the law. I'm fighting for the proper application of law, the proper structure of the law. I urge you to do so as well, because it is a crucial element in how you're able to live your life. So how is the law that I love being abused? Now, natural law is not being abused, but it's certainly being ignored. God's law is being abused. How is man-made law, the law that I love, being abused? Well, decisions are being made not on what's good for the people, but for political purposes. So many laws where the politicians are making it, they're corrupt politicians. That's why we have independent corruption commissions in Australia with insufficient powers. There's no federal anti-corruption commission because the politicians don't want to be investigated. When politicians make law based on political matters, not what's good for people, that is an abuse. The declaration in Victoria and Australia of states of emergency is an abuse of the law. There is no state of emergency. And the border lockdowns that have happened in this wonderful country of Australia are criminal, based on abuse of law, based on an abuse of the word emergency. You see, that's how the law is abused, because they create new definitions of words. And the pandemic word has been redefined by WHO. Did you know that? So they play with the definition of words to suit political purposes. That's an abuse of the law. Words mean what they do, and that can develop over time. But when you suddenly change the definition of a word to suit an outcome that you want to create, that's abuse. Thirdly, the Constitution of Australia has been trampled upon in so many ways. I wish I had the time to go through how it has been trampled upon. It's also being abused in America, in many other countries. And understanding how a country's constitution is supposed to work is crucial to democracy, not dictatorship, because dictators, they just do what they like. They pass a law regardless. I live in a democracy. America is a democracy. That means that the politicians are the servants of the people, not the masters. That's why government ministers are called ministers, because they are there to minister to their masters. I'm not the servant of government. Government is the servant of me. That's why people employed by government are public servants. Don't get caught up in this nonsense that the government has the authority. No, the government has authority only through you and me. It is people power that gives the politicians their power to be ministering to us. The fourth way it's being abused is that the rule of law, that our trust in the law, the fact that we rely on the law, that's called the rule of law, that we respect it. But that respect is being diminished by the way that government, public, by the way government employees and public servants are acting, particularly the police that I've already mentioned. That is destroying respect for the law and the rule of law. That is an abuse of the law. Unless people respect the law, the rule of law breaks down, because the rule of law is tied into natural law, to God's law. And if we don't respect what's happening, that rule of law breaks down and society breaks down. And the fifth way the law is being abused is when justice is denied. When justice is denied. And one of the key ways that justice is denied is when judges have been corrupted. When judges make decisions not based on the law, but based on political influence, based on political considerations to advance the interests, the political interests of a government. I say our lives would be far worse without good, effective laws. That's why I fight for the law. That's why I love the law. I urge you to love it. Law can develop over time. It's very interesting how our awareness around Indigenous peoples, around natural laws, around deeply held laws is increasing. And if you want to explore in some detail how Australia's constitution is being trampled on by our politicians, I urge you to look up Senator Rodney Cullerton, a senator from Western Australia, who has arranged for the crafting of a magnificent 10-page petition to the Queen of England. And it articulates the extraordinary range of breaches of the Constitution of Australia. Take an interest. I urge you to do so. Now, all of that's pretty heavy, and so let me lighten the tone for a moment before I give you our resources with a little bit of humour and, of course, my coffee. And I asked you this question because I used to be a lawyer. What's the difference between a good lawyer and a great lawyer? Well, a good lawyer knows the law, but a great lawyer knows the judge. There you are. Now, my quote, very relevant to this question of government behaviour, by Thomas Jefferson, one of the founders of the United States of America, as you clearly would know. He said this: the care of human life and happiness, and not their destruction, is the first and only legitimate object of good government. So he says a good government, its only legitimate object is the care of human life and the care of human happiness. The book that I recommend this week is written by Judith Brett, an Australian historian, about Alfred Deakin, our second Prime Minister. It's called The Enigmatic Mr. Deakin. The relevance of this book is that it goes through the amazing trials and tribulations of the crafting of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Australia. Not the Australian Constitution, but the Constitution of the Commonwealth, where we had 6 colonies. Alfred Deakin, the work that he put into that, and the work that all of the founding fathers put into the creation of the Australian Constitution, and the negotiations with the United Kingdom at the time, with Queen Victoria, those negotiations. It's worthy of understanding that. For Americans, I've read 2 biographies of Thomas Jefferson. They are inspirational of how difficult it is to create such a constitution. And I say it's crucial to protect them, to preserve them. My song this week is by Bob Dylan. Very relevant when it was first written in the 60s, still relevant now. Come gather around people wherever you roam. The times they are a-changing. And he sings, come senators, congressmen, please heed the call. Don't stand in the doorways, don't blacken the halls. And it goes on there. Powerful words. The times they are a-changing. And they can change for the good or they can change for the bad. I'm implacably opposed to totalitarianism, to dictatorship, to medical apartheid, to discrimination. The times they're changing. Which way do you want them to change? A way that preserves human life and happiness, or a way that destroys it? My spiritual tip for you this week is to think about the natural laws, the God's law that impacts on your life. And my health tip for you is to think about the natural laws that apply to the functioning of your human body. You see, is your human body designed to have poisons stabbed into it to protect it? Or do you think nature designed this magnificent body of yours to function without the stabbing and injection of gene manipulating substances? What do you think? What do you think, Nate? Do you think man is smarter than nature? That's for you to contemplate as your health tip. And for my spot of humour to again take you through the journey of passion and important stuff and humour, let's go back to the law of the trial judge. Let me tell you what the judge said. He said, you, accused, are charged with bashing your wife to death with a hammer. And as he was reading that out in open court, a voice from the back of the courtroom said, you bastard. The judge was somewhat taken aback. And he says, and you're also charged with bashing your mother-in-law to death with a hammer. And a voice from the back of the courtroom goes, you bastard. The judge says, excuse me, sir, I will not have such interruptions in my courtroom. What seems to be the problem? The man at the back of the courtroom stands up and he says, Your Honour, I am the neighbour of the accused, and every time I asked him to borrow a hammer, he said he didn't have one. There you are. So, there's some great legal jokes, I have to tell you. There's another one, you know. I can give you another one. When you die and you're not a lawyer, they bury you 6 feet under. But you know, they bury lawyers 12 feet under. Do you know why? Because deep down, lawyers are okay. Well, that's about it for this week. Think about how today's big idea of loving the law, of fighting to preserve the law, of taking an interest in the development of the law is going to be relevant to preserving your life and making it better. Teach your children to understand why the law is important, why it's important to have respect for the law. And if politicians are doing things that destroy our respect for the law, that abuse the law, then we are each called upon to take responsibility and to stop that happening. I hope I'm provoking you to think in new ways, to think about your life, to think what's possible in your life. Please visit our websites, covest.com, charlescovest.com. Consider reading my books, Passionate People Produce, Passionate Performance. At charlescovest.com you can learn more about the self-awareness and passion quest, one-on-one executive coaching designed for C-suite executives, for business owners, for lawyers, accountants, dentists. If you are enjoying this podcast, this YouTube, please subscribe. Press the button, press the notifications. I'm grateful that you're here. We are grateful. Julie does a great job producing these episodes. If you enjoy this, please share it with your family, with your friends, with your colleagues. Please, if you have any suggestions, questions, contact us. And until next week, may you have a passion-filled, challenging, fun week, despite what's happening in Australia with house arrests, in Victoria, the silver medalist in the most days of house arrest around the world. But I promise you, I still enjoy my life because I'm pursuing my passion. I hope you're committed to that journey as well. Thanks for being with us. I look forward to being with you next week. Bye.